So for people that don't know you, Jan, you have just such an incredible resume, many, many years as the lead forecaster for the National Weather Service. You're currently, and for how many decades now? 4 decades maybe, certified consulting meteorologist for Golden Gate Weather Services?
Yeah, it's some. I've been a professional meteorologist now for 45 years, and the first half with the National Weather Service, the second consulting with my own company, Golden Gate Weather Services, and then overlaid on that, I've been an adjunct professor at San Francisco and San Jose State Universities.
And what an incredible professor they have in you.
Oh, thanks.
Wonderful. And so for people that don't know, and it's their fault if they don't know, because you are very much a celebrity on the West Coast, but we are talking to the AAA community in the northeastern part of the country. You are one of the most dedicated professionals to the topic of pediatric vehicular heat stroke. And after you published your study on this topic, you really did become our nation's leading expert. So I know, I've worked with you through the National Child Passenger Safety Board, in AAA now, but the National Safety Council, and very importantly, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration all lean to your data and utilize your expertise in this subject. So thank you so much for being
You're welcome
today.
I'm fortunate in that, this has become, sort of part of an important part of my life. It's my passion project. I'm at the point of my other professional careers that, that this seems really important. And over the 20 years I have now been involved with the issue of pediatric vehicular heat stroke, I've had grandchildren be born and, and gone through these ages, and I've gotten to see these things again. And it has, again, rejuvenated that and, really brings it to life.
So for people that don't know, would you be willing to share a little bit about the story of what initially fueled your passion specifically toward vehicular pediatric heat stroke?
Sure. It happened a fairly innocuous way. I've been a meteorologist for a long time, done lots of media interviews, literally thousands of them over the years. I got a call in July of 2001 from a reporter at the San Jose Mercury News in Bay Area, where I live, saying, hey, we just had the death of a 5-month-old child who was left in a car. How hot could have gotten in that car? I go, hey, Frank, I don't know exactly. I don't want to pull a number out of the hat. Let me do a little bit of research.
Right.
And, I started looking around some journals, some other things. I found a couple very pointed studies where they looked at a single day for a single case. Nothing very comprehensive, nothing that I could use to answer his question. So I anecdotally that summer started keeping track of temperatures in my own car with a remote thermometer. And as I started looking at how hot my car got and how rapidly it reached those temperatures, I go, this is really interesting stuff. I'm a scientist. I'm a curious guy. So the following year, I did a controlled study where I looked at 16 different days, temperatures ranging from 72 to 96 degrees, so a whole range of summertime temperatures. Where I am in California, we're sort of the middle latitudes of the United States. So it's not the lower sun angles of the north or the higher sun angles of the south. So I think fairly represented data. After I finished that, I had another relationship with the head of emergency medicine at Stanford. And I was mentioning this to him at a conference on a totally unrelated issue. He says, I have a couple of residents who would really be interested in this. Maybe you guys could publish it.
Wonderful.
And so we worked on it with Catherine McLaren and Jim Quinn. And we published it in American Academy of Pediatrics journal in July of 2005. And since that time, it's become, basically the go-to study on how hot cars get. And then that has sort of then led my working with child safety groups, organizations like AAA, government agencies, as far as providing them the data about how hot cars get. And then that's evolved in my becoming an epidemiologist in tracking these cases.
That's amazing. So you were really the first to publish academic literature on this topic with a controlled study. behind you.
Yeah, for any sort of a comprehensive study where I looked at a number of days, and that was, organizations really wanted that peer-reviewed study out there that they could then use for their child advocacy issues.
Absolutely. So when did you launch the website noheatstroke.org?
That was probably only about 5 years ago.
Wow.
But
Okay.
prior to that, between about 2006 and 2016 or so, I ran it off of my own server at Golden Gate Weather Services, just as a separate directory people could go to. And then um, I got a small grant from National Safety Council to basically set up and maintain and to track cases. And so that's when noheatstroke.org came into existence as a separate entity.
I feel very lucky to probably have known about it in the inaugural year then, because, you know, AAA year after year, we work very hard to get this message out, and I always look to your data first. So thank you so much. The
Thank
traffic
you.
safety advocates across the country are definitely all utilizing your data, which is excellent. And the way you've laid out that website is also very, very helpful to help us understand state laws around this topic, best practices. I also noticed that we've already had, unfortunately, our first pediatric fatality this year, just a few weeks ago. It looked like a young boy in Texas, 4 years old, passed this past April. So, I just had a thought and I wanted to get your thoughts around this. Just with the outbreak of COVID-19, I can see where a lot of parents just running errands with small children, just wanting to, run into the grocery store really quickly, run into the dry cleaner really quickly, not wanting to expose their children to the virus, might be a little bit more apt to leave them in a car thinking, oh, it's just 5 minutes. So what would you say to those parents?
Not even for a minute. Just don't do it. There are so many other things that I've seen in tracking heat stroke cases that I've seen have happened with children who are left unattended in cars. They have put cars into gear and killed themselves or injured others. There are just numerous cases every year of what was an attempted carjacking becomes an attempted kidnapping.
Right.
And so it's not worth doing it. And also, that quick 5 minute trip into a store, is never 5 minutes. It's always a lot longer. You get behind the person in line with the 10-item line that has 50 items.
You're absolutely right, especially
you
with
know
social distancing practices. I think it takes a lot longer to cash out and get those
and,
errands run.
yeah,
So
and so that in the new reality that becomes another issue. And in that that 5 minutes becomes 10 or 15 minutes. That's when we can really get into serious heat problems. One of the things from my study was that in the first 10 minutes after a car is closed, the temperature inside that car rises 19 degrees. And so let's say it's a reasonably, normal summer day of 80, 85 degrees somewhere. All of a sudden you're at 104 degrees in just 10 minutes.
right.
That's a temperature if a child's body temperature, and their bodies heat up much faster than adults. That's the clinical definition for heat stroke. And
104 degrees,
yeah,
exactly.
and so just don't do it. There,
Right.
and actually the same goes with pets.
Yes.
Don't take pets and leave them in the car thinking they're going to be okay. Just
Yeah.
but find another alternative.
Right. And I like exactly what you said, just to stress the fact that, for both pets and for children, their thermoregulatory systems are not like an adult's. And you said 5 times faster they heat up.
Right, and so they can get into distress and heat stroke, and when the body temperature reaches 107 degrees, that's when organs begin shutting down, and death can occur fairly rapidly. And it's just not worth it to go in and get that gallon of milk and that loaf of bread.
Right. And, so many, I think, fail to understand it. Today in New England, we have a beautiful spring day. We're in the high 50s. And, folks just really don't understand that it can happen at temperatures, low 50s, 60s. I think a lot of people don't really even think about it until we start getting to temperatures in the 80s around here.
Right. And certainly, at higher temperatures, these things can happen much faster. But one of the cases, that happened here locally in the Bay Area, a child was left in a car on a 67-degree day at a BART station, or rapid transit system here. And the children died of pediatric vehicular heat stroke. So it does not have to be a really hot day.
Right.
And again, that exacerbates the problem, but it doesn't go away at lower temperatures.
Right. Now, Jan, one of the things that another piece of information I got from your website was that 21 states have now um, written unattended child and vehicle laws. They have those on record. So it was interesting for me to take note of the fact only 2 of the states here in our AAA Northeast territory have laws on the books. We have Connecticut and then little old Rhode Island, where I live. But it was interesting to see that even in Rhode Island, where there is a law, they don't write a penalty, they don't write up a fine, it's not recorded. So really not such a great law. What are your feelings about the effectiveness of these laws in general?
So with the numbers of cases we have, which average 39 a year, it's real hard to see what the actual impact is of the laws. Number one, they have been staggered in over time in the different states over the last 20 years. And so we don't have a way to say, hey, this state put in a law and therefore the numbers dropped. I mean, the sample sizes are way too small. But it's I think that it really is more of an educational moment than a criminal moment. And there are laws. If something happens to the child, there are child neglect laws. There are child endangerment laws. There are, unfortunately, if a child dies, it can be manslaughter. Even some places may try it as a homicide. So, but having these laws on the books, I think I see them as and because many states, it's only a citation. It's like getting a traffic ticket.
Right.
Are, another educational tool.
Sure.
And interestingly enough, the here in California, where we have Caitlin's law, any money that goes for fines related to unattended children in cars go back into an educational program.
That's wonderful. That's what we like to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, beyond just, I think, caregivers having such a difficult time understanding how quickly it can happen, we also see a good percentage of children that are really innocently forgotten in vehicles by loving parents. And I think those are the most difficult conversations that I've had to have. A couple of years ago, I had the pleasure of moderating a panel on heat stroke at the Lifesavers Conference. And one of the panelists was a wonderful father. He was there with his wife and actually with the sheriff who arrived on the scene when they lost their young son. And he tragically was, under a lot of stress, having a very busy day. We see that change in routine often is the trigger. I guess, how do we get caregivers to understand that it can happen to anyone? It really does not discriminate.
Sure. And I think that's a real important part of the story, that it can happen to anyone. People do forget. People do go on automatic pilot. I mean, I've missed my own exit on the freeway. I'm distracted and go, oh, gee, I should have got off back there. So these sorts of things do happen, and I think having these personalized stories really help bring that to the front of the conversation. I know times when I've appeared on panels with parents. I'm just the numbers guy. It's really their stories that really resonate the deepest.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Also on the panel that I was lucky to moderate was neurologist Dr. David Diamond, who sort of explained how that can really happen in terms of memory. And, where many of these parents truly believe that they did make that stop and drop off their child at the babysitter, at the daycare, at school. So I agree. I think there's a lot of work that we can all do to advocate and to spread the word on this. And I hope to share a lot of your messages and your website with more people. What do you think? So I know we saw the Hot Cars Act and that good old fight, but it was interesting to see that the global automakers voluntarily came forward and said, hey, we want to develop this technology to remind parents that their children are left in the car. They set this goal to get this done by 2025. How effective do you think that technology could be?
I think it will be another tool in this universal problem. Now, though, the way that and the way some of the legislation, even one of the houses of Congress version of the Hot Car Act, they only look at reminder systems. So that means, like, if you have put a child in the backseat or open even the backseat door, it even doesn't have to be a child. Something will come on the light when you turn off the car saying, hey, be sure you check the back seat. So that is great as far as it goes, but of the total number of pediatric vehicular heat stroke deaths, only about 54% of those are accidentally forgotten in a car, and so that is what those are named at. Then we have what I call the forgotten 45%, which are the about 26% are where children gain access on their own to a car, typically right. 2 to 4 year olds. That was the case. The case this year in Texas was a 4-year-old got out of the house, got into the car, and was overcome by the heat.
Yeah.
So, and then there is the other 19% or so where children are knowingly left by a parent or caregiver. They think it's okay for them. Typically, it's not a quick errand. It's right. to go meet up with somebody, go to an appointment, go to the racetrack, go to the casino, go to a bar. And none of those. There is no good reason.
Right.
But so those parts of the problem are not addressed by just a reminder system.
True.
There are some efforts in it seems to be the minority at this point to have other sorts of systems that detect the presence of a living body inside a vehicle, or they detect weight upon the seat, or some other way.
Okay.
But again, I think all of these are adjunct to educational opportunities, and to be able to to get the message out there whatever way possible.
Right.
One of the reasons I love doing interviews like this today. I also, in Texas, there is a great initiative, and Texas sadly has by far the most number of cases.
Right.
But they have a state law where children, when they are born in a hospital, there are materials given out to the parents at that time about this being a problem.
That's wonderful.
And so therefore it's getting to every single parent that's involved, and that's been at least 5 years now. That's
a great initiative.
Yeah, and so
I know for new parents, one of the other things I've seen with children just being knowingly left behind, and just parents not realizing how quickly that car heats up, is that baby that just won't sleep, and mom drives around because that's the only way they'll fall asleep, and then they don't want to take them out of the car once they have them sleeping.
Been there, done that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I actually learned this from you, Jan, how little a cracked window will lower the temperature inside of a vehicle.
Yeah, and looking at what happens if a child is left for an extended period of time in a car. The average temperature car gets to is about 43 degrees above whatever the outside air temperature is. So, we're looking at temperatures 125, 140, up into that range.
Right.
And cracking a window 1.5 to 2 inches, which was part of the study that I did,
Mhm.
um, lowers the temperature by about 2 or 3 degrees.
Wow.
So you're going from 135 down to 133. That's not a life-saving measure. That's that,
Absolutely not.
that's a false promise.
And I recall you saying that it's within 30 minutes that that temperature will increase about 80% of the temp that it's going to reach. We see it happen very quickly within that first 30 minutes.
Right. And so after 30 minutes, the car is already 34, that 43 degrees above whatever that outside air temperature is. And those are temperatures that are not survivable for a small infant or a small child.
Wow, such good information. Thank you. And this is exactly precisely what we need caregivers to know. Exactly. So, is there anything else that you would like to add other than making me promise you that I will share your work as widely as I can possibly share it here?
That is great, because the more people that get some of these little tips, that one person that here's about this interview, they do something, that changes their routine and their, so that they can remember, couple probably a good way to end, or probably was some of the basic safety tips. There are lots of, even without thinking of electronic reminders, apps on phones and things. Keep a stuffed animal or something back in the child's car seat. When you put the child back there, you put that up in the front seat as a visual reminder. Or when you get in the car, put your lunch, your briefcase, your purse into the back seat with the child.
Right.
And the best thing to put back there is put your cell phone back there.
I was just going to say that. No one
Yeah,
goes anywhere these days without their cell phone.
that's right. That's an automatic grab. And
Right.
it's also, it may cut down on distracted driving from that point of view. So that's a win-win-win for sure.
Yes, 2-for-1 safety tip.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then, cases where, children get out of the house and possibly get into cars.
Right.
A really important thing people should do is, number one, if a child is missing, check the pool first. If you have a pool, or there's a pool nearby, or a creek or a stream, and then check all vehicles, including the trunks of cars, down in the wheel wells. Those are the two places where a child can come to harm the
Absolutely.
fastest. If they're hiding in the closet, they're in trouble, but they're still alive.
Right, right. So, and just reminding people to lock their vehicles when they pull into the driveway so children can't gain access is so important.
You lock vehicles, and also keep, especially key fobs, away from kids.
Right.
They love beep beep. They click the button. There was a terrible VW ad back, it's probably 10 years ago, where the little child is out beeping the car open. And and the parents are watching from the window. Oh, this is really cute. Well, that could be a deadly mistake.
Absolutely. And they make children's toys to look like key fobs and little
Yeah,
sets of keys.
yeah.
So, yeah,
And it's unintended consequences sometimes, are the worst.
yeah, absolutely. So I just want to remind everybody one more time of your website, which is noheatstroke.org.
Right. That's the one that will get you to, all the things we've talked about, plus lots more data, statistics. And I encourage people to, to use that data, to share that data. And again, the more people that, can get, a baseline measure of how big this problem is, the greater it will be.
Absolutely. And like you say, every single death is preventable with heat stroke, with vehicular child heat
Yeah,
stroke.
yeah. In all three categories, all the way across the socioeconomic spectrum, every single one is preventable.
Great. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's
We're
been my
so
pleasure,
lucky to
Dan.
have you. And keep up the great work. And we will be.
Okay. Well,
We will be watching.
I'm hoping that that maybe the change in routines this year, that we're going to be looking at a year that's not that is not as bad as the last two have been.
That's absolutely right. I mean, 2018, that was such a doozy. It
Well,
was just
and even
heartbreaking.
last year was, you know, just one below, was
Just one,
52.
that's true. That's true.
So, but you know, it's interesting in looking at the statistics. If we go back to 2014 and 2015, there was 31 deaths and 24 deaths in back-to-back years. And we don't
Right.
know why that happened. We don't know why we see this spike. We look back over the 21 years of data now that we have, and the average has stayed right around 38 or 39, which is 38 or 39 too many.
Absolutely. In all heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking stories.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
There, you know, I recently came across a discussion in a book, and they're talking about, you know, when a s- a- a spouse loses their partner, you know, they become a widow or a widower, you know, um, and if a child loses a parent, they become an orphan.
right.
But there is no term for when a parent loses a child. You know,
Right.
it's just not part of our vocabulary.
Right.
Children should not, you know, die before their parents
Absolutely.
for this or obviously any other reason. But you know, I thought that's you know, it's a pretty deep sort of perspective to look at it. You know, that we don't, you know, don't have this as part of our lexicon.
Absolutely. You're so right on that. And, you know, the two takeaways from our conversation that I'm going to push for is making sure that our children's hospitals and our local hospitals for maternity, labor and delivery, that every parent leaves with some information about heat stroke,
Uh-huh.
and also that every child passenger safety technician through our AAA Northeast Club closes every conversation with parents with this reminder. Because I
Well,
think,
yeah, I would hope they would have, you know, have a handout, have some literature
yes,
that they could pass on, and maybe on the counter at every AAA office as well.
yes, you know, it's something that doesn't get as much attention up where we live in this part of the country. So we need to work on that. So thank you so, so much for everything, Jan.
You're very welcome. Great
You're doing
talking to you.
God's work.
Yeah.
So stay
Keep in touch.
healthy, stay well, and I
Okay,
will
you too.
follow up with you and talk to you soon.
Please do. Okay, take care.
Okay, take care. Have a good night.
Bye.